The year was 1871, and the town of Mercy Creek baked under a punishing sun that seemed to judge every soul beneath it. Dust swirled through the main street, catching on boots and hems, rising like the breath of the land itself. Men stood silent along the boardwalks, their hats low, eyes hidden in shadow. Women clutched their shawls, children pressed against their skirts. And in the center of the street, a woman knelt in the dirt, her wrists bound, her hair matted with sweat and ash. Evelyn Shaw did not cry. She'd done enough of that already. The sheriff's voice broke the silence. Evelyn Shaw, you're accused of arson, of murder, and of bringing wickedness into this town. His tone was flat, but his eyes betrayed something darker, guilt perhaps, or shame. Sheriff Clay Weston was not a man who often wavered, but his hand trembled slightly as he held the warrant. Evelyn looked up, meeting his gaze. She remembered when those same eyes had looked at her with tenderness when he'd promised her safety. Now, they held only distance. The preacher, a tall, gray-haired man with a voice like cracked timber, stepped forward. "Confess, child," he urged. "Spare your soul before the Almighty." His hand rested on the Bible, but his eyes gleamed with the fever of righteousness. The crowd stirred behind him. A boy pointed at Evelyn, his voice breaking with excitement. She did it. She burned it all. Laughter rippled among the onlookers, sharp and cruel. Evelyn said nothing. Her lips were split, her throat raw. Every breath drew in the taste of dust and smoke, the ghosts of the fire that had devoured the saloon 2 nights ago. She could still see the flames clawing at the sky, hear the screams of those trapped inside. She had run to help, but by the time she reached the doors, they'd collapsed in a rain of embers. Someone had found her locket in the ashes the next morning, a small silver heart engraved with her late husband's initials. That was all it took. Rumor spread faster than fire in Mercy Creek. By noon, her name was cursed in every home. By sundown, the sheriff had come for her. "I didn't start that fire," she rasped, voice breaking. "You know I didn't." Her words fell flat against the air. Clay shifted his weight, jaw tightening. "Then why was your locket there, Evelyn? Why'd you leave it behind?" She wanted to scream that he knew why, that he'd given it back to her only days before, in the quiet of his office, when they'd spoken in whispers neither dared call love. But she saw the preacher's eyes flick toward him, sharp and curious, and she bit her tongue. Mercy Creek had no mercy for sinners. Martha Grigg stepped from the crowd, skirts brushing the dust. Her voice trembled as she said, "Sheriff, I was with her that night. Evelyn came to my house before sundown." She didn't. Her husband's hand gripped her arm, silencing her. "That's enough, Martha." He pulled her back, and she lowered her gaze. The preacher raised his hands. "Evil hides behind false tongues. You'd risk your souls defending the guilty." The crowd murmured its approval. Someone spat. Another shouted, "Hang her and be done." Evelyn's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst. Around her, faces blurred together into a single shape of judgment, neighbors, friends, even the children she once taught to read. Their fingers pointed like spears. The sky above was a flat, merciless blue. Clay motioned to his deputies. "Take her to the jail. We'll hold trial at dawn." As they dragged her through the street, Evelyn stumbled, her knees scraping the dirt. Laughter followed her like the crack of a whip. When the cell door slammed shut behind her, she sagged against the wall. The air was thick with the stink of iron and sweat. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, and the sound made her flinch. She stared at the bars, their shadows falling across her hands. Those hands had once mended torn shirts, baked bread, held her husband as he coughed up blood from the mines Clay Weston owned. When the collapse took him and 12 others, Clay had called it an accident. But she'd seen the ledgers, had known he'd ordered those tunnels dug too deep. She kept quiet then, hoping silence would protect her. It hadn't. Lightning flashed in the distance, followed by the faint growl of thunder. She pressed her forehead against the cool metal and whispered, "You think you can bury the truth, Clay, but it burns hotter than any fire." The hours bled together. She could hear the murmur of voices outside, men talking, boots shifting in the dust. At some point, someone came with a bowl of water and a torn piece of bread. She didn't touch it. Her thoughts drifted to her husband's grave, marked only by a pile of stones beyond the ridge. She imagined his voice, calm and steady, telling her not to give in to fear. Toward midnight, the door creaked open. Clay stepped inside, lantern in hand. The light threw harsh lines across his face, deepening the guilt etched there. "I didn't want this," he said quietly. "You know that." Evelyn's laugh was hollow. "You wanted it the moment you let them talk, the moment you didn't stop them." He looked away. "If I fight them now, they'll turn on me. The town needs someone to blame. And you chose me." His silence was answer enough. He set the lantern down, eyes softening for heartbeat. "If you confess, maybe they'll spare you the rope." She stepped closer, chains clinking. "And if I don't, then dawn'll be your last sunrise." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Clay," she said, steady now, "what really burned in that saloon?" His hand froze on the latch. He didn't answer. He just lowered his head and left her in the dark. When the first light of dawn crept through the bars, Evelyn was still standing. The dust outside glowed gold, and the sound of voices gathered again in the square. She knew what came next: the rope, the prayers, the silence that followed. Two men entered, one holding a sack. "Time," he muttered. They pulled her from the cell, tying her wrists again. As they let her out, she felt the sun rise against her face, warm and unforgiving. The townspeople waited, a sea of faces beneath the glare. Martha was there, her eyes red. The preacher clutched his Bible, shouting verses that drowned beneath the wind. Children giggled as one of the men slipped the sack over Evelyn's head. She knelt in the dirt once more. The world was sound and scent now, the dry earth, the creak of rope, the whisper of boots shifting. Inside her chest, something hardened, sharp and unyielding. They thought this would be her end, but they hadn't seen what the truth could do when cornered. As thunder rolled over the mountains, she drew a slow, steady breath. If she was to die at dawn, then the truth would rise with her. And somewhere beyond the horizon, Mercy Creek would burn again, only this time in justice. The noose swayed in the dawn wind, its frayed rope creaking like a whisper of death. Evelyn could hear the preacher's voice above the murmuring crowd, heavy with false mercy. The sack over her head smelled of dirt and sweat, her breath hot against the coarse fabric. The sheriff stood beside her, silent, the weight of his guilt pressing down like the sun about to rise. Then came the sound, a single echoing gunshot. The air split apart. Chaos followed. Men shouted, women screamed, and horses neighed in terror. Someone yanked her backward, the rope falling loose from her neck. A strong hand grabbed her arm. "Run," a voice hissed. The sack was torn away, and through the haze of dust, Evelyn saw a stranger, his face hidden behind a scarf, eyes dark and steady. He fired again toward the crowd. Bullets sparked off the gallows post. The stranger threw her up onto a horse and swung into the saddle behind her. "Hold on." The horse lunged forward. Evelyn clung to the saddle horn as they burst through the square. The mob scattered, curses chasing them. The sheriff shouted her name once, half warning, half regret, but the wind stole his voice away. Hooves thundered down the main street, kicking up dust and fear. A bullet whined past her ear. Another struck the dirt beside them. She didn't look back. The town fell away behind them, shrinking to a smear of smoke and rooftops. Ahead stretched the Badlands, miles of rock and heat and silence. The sun rose, red and merciless. She gasped for breath, her wrists still raw from the rope. "Who are you?" she managed to shout. "Name's Jonas Reed," the stranger said, his voice low, roughened by years on the trail. "You can thank me later if we live that long." They rode hard until the land broke into canyons. When the horse finally slowed, Evelyn's whole body trembled. The wind here carried the taste of iron and sage. Jonas dismounted, scanning the horizon. His coat was torn, his revolver half drawn. He moved with the wary grace of a man who'd lived too long with danger. "Why help me?" she asked, her throat raw. He looked at her, squinting beneath his hat. "Because I know what it's like to be hunted for something you didn't do." Evelyn studied him, broad-shouldered, sun-scarred, a man shaped by the wilderness itself. "You expect me to believe that out of kindness you rode into a hanging?" Jonas gave a small, humorless smile. "Kindness don't buy you much out here. But truth, well, that's worth dying for sometimes." A shout echoed in the distance, followed by the faint crack of gunfire. The sheriff's posse had taken to the trail. Jonas cursed under his breath, tightening the saddle straps. "They won't stop. Clay Weston's the sort who buries his sins deep. And you," he gave her a long look, "you just crawled out of the hole he dug." Evelyn climbed back onto the horse without another word. They rode toward the cliffs, weaving through arroyos and scrub. Heat shimmered off the sand, and sweat stung her eyes. Once, she thought she saw movement behind them, riders on the ridge, but it vanished in the glare. By midday, the land turned cruel. The sun hung like a burning coin in a white sky. Jonas led her to a narrow ravine, where a trickle of water wound between rocks. They drank in silence. The coolness on her tongue felt like mercy. "Clay did this," she said. "Finally, he framed me." Jonas nodded slowly. "He's done worse. Used to run the mines outside of Carson Bluff. Paid men in whiskey and promises. When they started talking union, that mine collapsed. Official word was a cave-in." His eyes flicked toward her. "You lost someone in that, didn't you?" Her throat tightened. "My husband, Samuel." Jonas stared at the water, his jaw clenching. "Then you got more reason than most to see this through." She frowned. "What do you mean?" He looked up at her, eyes shadowed beneath his hat brim. "Clay's ledger. It's proof of the bribes, the deaths, the land he stole. He burned that saloon to hide it." The words struck her like a bullet. "How do you know that?" "Because I was supposed to do it," he said quietly. "Clay hired me to set that fire. Told me it was insurance, that the place held debts he couldn't afford to pay. When I found out there were people inside, I walked away. He sent another man that night. Paid him twice to keep his mouth shut. Guess he didn't." Evelyn's stomach twisted. "And you expect me to trust you?" "No," Jonas said. "But I can get you the truth. It's buried in the old mine up north, where your husband died. Clay hid the ledger there." The mention of the mine sent a chill through her. She could almost hear the echo of falling rock, the screams of men trapped in the dark. "You're telling me to go back there?" He met her gaze. "If you want a name clear, that's where we start." They rode again, northward, the land hardening into stone and shadow. Storm clouds gathered in the distance, their edges lit like steel. The wind carried the promise of rain or trouble. Evelyn's body ached, but something fierce burned inside her now, a will sharper than fear. As twilight bled across the desert, they reached the entrance of the old mine. The timbers were rotted, the air thick with the scent of earth and decay. Jonas lit a lantern, its flickering glow painting the walls in trembling gold. "Stay close," he said. They descended into the dark. The tunnel walls closed around them, the silence broken only by their breath and the faint drip of water. Evelyn's pulse pounded in her ears. When Jonas stopped, she nearly ran into him. "There," he said, pointing to a wooden crate half buried under collapsed beams. Together they dragged it free. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a leather-bound ledger, edges blackened by smoke. Jonas opened it, the pages filled with names, payments, signatures, Clay Weston's mark on nearly every line. Evelyn stared, her hands trembling. This could end him. "It could," Jonas said, "if we live long enough to show it." A shout echoed through the tunnels. Boots clattered on rock. Lantern light flickered from the passage behind them. "Clay's men," Jonas muttered. "Go!" Gunfire exploded. The air filled with dust and echoes. Evelyn ducked behind a beam as splinters flew. Jonas returned fire, his shots deafening in the narrow space. One man fell, but more came. Jonas grabbed her arm. "Run!" They sprinted deeper into the mine, the lantern swinging wildly. The ground trembled beneath them as a bullet struck a support beam. Rocks rained down. Jonas shoved her aside, just as part of the ceiling collapsed, cutting them off from the tunnel behind. He stumbled, blood darkening his sleeve. Evelyn caught him, her heart hammering. "Jonas!" He gritted his teeth, pressing the ledger into her hands. "Take it. Ride south. Show it to the marshal in Carson Bluff. I'm not leaving you. You have to." His voice was barely a whisper now. "I lit one fire by refusing to do his bidding. Don't let me die. For nothing." Boots echoed closer. She hesitated, torn between fear and fury. Then she nodded once, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her face. "I'll finish it." Jonas managed a faint, crooked smile. "Didn't doubt you would." She turned and ran, clutching the ledger to her chest. The tunnel opened to the night, wind screaming across the cliffs. Behind her came another gunshot, then silence. Evelyn mounted the horse and spurred it hard, the storm breaking overhead. Lightning split the sky, rain slashing down in cold sheets. The desert roared with thunder, but her mind was clear now. By sunrise, Mercy Creek would wake to another kind of reckoning. And this time, she wouldn't run. The night was still when Anna reached the edge of the valley. The moon hung low, its pale light cutting through the haze that clung to the hills. Her horse was lathered and trembling beneath her, breath coming in hard, shuddering gasps. She had ridden without rest since dusk, the fear of what lay behind her driving her harder than any spur could. Ahead, the faint glow of a campfire flickered through the trees, Samuel's fire. She slid from the saddle, boots sinking into damp earth, and for a long moment she simply stood there, breathing, listening. Every sound of the wilderness pressed close, the whisper of the wind through the pines, the lonely cry of a coyote far off. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the revolver at her hip. "Samuel," she whispered, though there was no answer. She stepped into the clearing, where the fire crackled low and weak. Samuel sat across from it, hunched and motionless, his hat pulled low. For an instant, she almost turned back. He looked like a man carved from stone, shoulders rigid, face half hidden in shadow. But she couldn't. Too much had already been lost, too much left unsaid. He didn't move when she approached. "You shouldn't have come," he said, finally, voice low, steady. "I had to," she said. "They're coming, Samuel. The town, Miles, Carter, all of them. They mean to hang you before sunrise." He lifted his head then, eyes cold as the steel of his colt. "They think I killed him." "Did you?" she asked softly. His silence stretched long. The fire cracked, throwing a brief shimmer across his face. Tired, haunted, but not cruel. "No," he said at last, "but I wanted to. You know what he did to your brother. You know what he did to me." Anna stepped closer, the smell of wood smoke and dust filling her lungs. "Then why run? Why let them think you're guilty?" Samuel rose slowly, his movements heavy, deliberate. "Because truth don't matter out here. They needed someone to blame. And when you're half Cheyenne, you're an easy target." Her chest tightened. She remembered the way the townsfolk had looked at him that night, fear mixed with hatred, the kind that didn't fade with words. "Then let's leave," she said. "We can ride south, cross the border, start over." He shook his head. "Running won't change what's been done. Your brother's dead. Miles saw to that. And now he means to wash his hands in my blood." Anna stared at him, the truth striking like a blow. "You think killing Miles will bring peace?" "It'll bring justice," he said, quietly. The word hung between them, bitter and sharp. Somewhere in the darkness, the distant rumble of hooves echoed faintly. Anna turned, eyes widening. "They're closer than I thought." Samuel's hand went to his revolver. "Then it's time." "No," she hissed. "You'll die if you stay. Please, Samuel, don't make this worse." He met her gaze, something raw flickering in his eyes. "It's already worse. You just don't see it yet." Before she could answer, the first shot split the night. Bark exploded from the tree beside her. Anna dropped to the ground, heart hammering. Voices shouted from the ridge, Miles's men, closing in fast. Samuel grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a fallen log just as another bullet whined past. "They've surrounded us," she whispered. "Not yet," he said, checking his gun. "We can make it to the creek. Horses are tethered there." "Samuel, move." They broke from cover, racing through the trees as gunfire roared behind them. Sparks lit the dark as bullets struck rock and branch. The forest came alive with chaos, shouts, curses, the pounding of boots. Anna stumbled, but Samuel caught her, dragging her forward until they reached the water's edge. The current was swift, swollen from the storm that had passed earlier, churning black in the moonlight. "We can't cross that," she cried. "We don't have a choice." He waded in first, the icy water rising to his waist. Anna followed, teeth chattering as the cold bit deep. Shots rang out again. Miles's men had reached the bank. Samuel fired back. Once, twice, driving them to cover. Then the two of them plunged into the deeper current, the world spinning as the river tore at them. Anna's fingers slipped from his for a moment, and terror clawed her chest. She gasped, swallowed water, fought to find him again. Then his hand, strong, steady, gripping hers tight. Together, they crashed against the far bank, coughing and drenched. For a long moment they lay there, breathing hard. Then Samuel pushed himself up. "They'll be right behind us. We can't stop." But she caught his sleeve. "You can't keep running from ghosts, Samuel." He looked at her, eyes shadowed. "I'm not running. I'm heading back." "Back? To what?" "To finish it." He turned and disappeared into the trees before she could stop him. Anna cursed under her breath, forcing herself to her feet. She knew where he was going, the old mine at Copper Ridge, where Miles kept his men and his secrets. She followed, the forest blurring past as exhaustion faded beneath a single burning thought. She wouldn't let him face it alone. By the time she reached the ridge, dawn was bleeding into the horizon. The mine loomed ahead, a black wound against the pale light. Voices echoed from within, Miles and his men laughing, unaware of what was coming. Samuel stood at the entrance, revolver drawn, shoulders squared. Anna stepped into the open. "Don't do this," she pleaded. He didn't turn. "Go home, Anna." "There's no home left if you die here." Before he could answer, Miles appeared, a shotgun resting on his arm, smirk curling his lips. "Well, look who decided to crawl back." Samuel's jaw tightened. "You framed me." "I gave the town what it wanted," Miles said easily. "A monster to hang so they could sleep at night." Anna's voice trembled. "You killed my brother." Miles shrugged. "Your brother was a thief. He stole from me. Justice had to be done." Samuel's gun lifted. Then justice comes again. The world exploded in noise. 2 shots, nearly won. Miles staggered, eyes wide with shock, before collapsing to the dirt. Samuel stood still, smoke curling from his barrel. For a heartbeat, everything was silent. Then the remaining men opened fire. Anna dove behind a cart, shouting his name, but Samuel didn't move fast enough. A bullet struck his shoulder, another caught his side. He fell hard, blood darkening his shirt. She scrambled to him, dragging him behind cover. "Stay with me," she whispered, pressing a hand to the wound. He looked at her, breath ragged. "It's done," he murmured. "They'll know now." The truth, it was always darker than they thought. Tears stung her eyes. "Don't you leave me." He smiled faintly. "You'll ride on. Tell them what happened. Tell them who I was." The gunfire faded as Miles's men fled, their courage gone with their leader. The dawn broke fully then, spilling gold across the ridge. Anna held him close, feeling the warmth slip away. When it was over, she stood alone, wind stirring her hair. The valley below was quiet again, as if the night's fury had never been. She mounted her horse, the weight of the story heavy in her chest, and rode toward the rising sun. And somewhere deep inside, she knew this land would remember. And so would she.